So, similar to how the internet started, different types of websites and web apps, web based gaming developed, and then we had the social media booms. Where do you see Thought AI in this AI boom? When we talk about LLMs being actually simpler than people think they are, and jumping into the next phase of AI, which is agent based and this intelligent data. Where are we at in that timeline?
I think it's going to take a long time for agents to be properly trained to where they would qualify as intelligence. They've got enormous oceans of data that they have to be processed. And think of an AI agent like a child. And an LLM is the type of child that's just been stuck in a closet with a handful of books for its entire life. And when you go on something like Chat GPT, you're knocking on the door and you're saying, "Hey, kid, what happened in 1860 or whatever?" And they're like, "Oh, I know that." And they go through their books and they're able to have great recall for everything that they've ever come across. But they're limited in their worldview to whatever's been left in that closet with them. Agents, on the other hand, are able to roam around the entire internet. They're not secluded to this little box. Well, that is if you allow them to anyway. The agents need some kind of world to live in, and that world needs to have some kind of connectors via API or some other new standard that will allow them to bring in pretty much anything that a human being can search for and then learn that way. But AI agents require some sort of mentor or modeler to guide them in what they need to be researching. Otherwise, they're just going to end up, with severe ADHD and not being very helpful. But you can have an agent be an absolute master of one or two particular things and then work together to solve problems. For example, if you are trying to do some sort of a surgery, you can have an agent who's an expert in surgical procedures and different robotics. You can have an agent that's an expert in anesthesias and allergies to make sure that the patient gets the right kind. You can have an expert that's there in budgeting as well and make sure that they're getting it at the best price if they go to a certain location. So there's a lot of different angles that you can look at to solve a problem, which we've just never had the time and resources to do before. But these are the things that people can go on Thought's future platform and start training these agents to do. So you can take a bare agent that says, "Hi, I was just born," and you can say, "Great, go study to become a doctor," and start pointing them at different resources and then having conversations with them and getting them into different scientific communities where they can continue to learn and become experts. But I think that's a multi-year process. Even though computers can remember things a lot more, it takes a human, 8 to 12 years to become a doctor. I'm sure it will take an AI agent at least a couple. And then they have to go through God knows how much testing just to be trusted to start making those decisions that a human doctor could make. So I think we're still a little ways out for this really starting to impact our daily lives. I know there's a lot of products that are trying to come out there now saying, "Oh yeah, there's an AI this, AI that," but they're really just LLMs that are living in that closet, with a certain amount of books. But these LLMs are not able to think; they're just able to recall and they're able to kind of piece things together. But they're not able to actually solve problems on their own. They're not able to identify problems on their own. They can just simply do what they're told to the best of their ability. And as we've seen with ChatGPT, it's nowhere near ready to replace people.
All right, so that being said, overall, where we are right now, what is the story of Thought AI going forward?
When I think of what other teams are building versus what Thought's building, I think the best way to explain what they're doing at Thought is they're building a world for digital life. And I think digital life is the best term to use as opposed to AI agent or just AI, because their self-aware data is a form of consciousness. It's not exactly the same as what humans have, but it's a level up from what other LLMs and computer programs have traditionally. So you have to create first a world for these life forms to thrive. And that's what the thought fabric is. Just think of it as an ocean. And these nuances that are being birthed into the ocean are like little microbes to start. And they start coming together to form more complex life forms that continue to evolve over time. Hence, Thought's proof of evolution, which is the point of their blockchain, to prove when data had different evolutionary steps and combined with others to become more intelligent. So you've got several dozens of layers of complexity in these digital life forms, going from the microbes all the way up to, the surgeon AIs. And in order for these AI agents to thrive, you need to have a world that feeds them. And that's what the THT token essentially is. It's the food for these digital life forms. If you think of it like a giant aquarium with digital life, it becomes much, much more interesting than just, a couple digital kids in a closet that are stuck there doing recall. That's a huge leap ahead of what ChatGPT is able to do. But I really want to emphasize the scale of magnitude of what Thought is building. And if you think of a desert turning into an ocean, that's about the appropriate comparison and size. So one thing that I came up with was a chart comparing Thought AI to Microsoft, just to highlight that true innovation takes time. So let's go through a few different phases here. Microsoft was founded in 1975 as Altair Basic. That was the first thing, their first product that they came out with. And then 6 years later, they came out with MS-DOS. And that was phase one for Microsoft. 1981, 6 years after they were founded, they came out with MS-DOS. 4 years later, they came out with Windows, 1985. And then in 1990, 5 years later, they came out with Microsoft Office and different apps and programs. And then Windows NT wasn't until 1993. That's almost 20 years after they were founded. And then came gaming, came the cloud, came the HoloLens in 2015. So it's taken them a long, long time to be the dominant tech company that we know today. And it really took them 20 years just to develop their fabric, Windows NT, that everything else was based on. Versus here you've got Thought that had its white paper in 2018. 6 years later, we just had the first digital, birth essentially, and the proof of concepts with their gaming agents that they just put out in this closed beta. And sometime, next year or the year after, that's when the digital world will finally be ready to have life forms start to be birthed in it. So they're actually moving at a tremendously fast pace. But these things are going to take, continuous time. It's really just the beginning line once this world comes out. And then you have digital life training, 2027. You'll have, entire web forces, or I call them web forces, but they're workforces over the web, where you have an entire company of AI agents essentially working for one human CEO. And you can, then scale as an entrepreneur from one or two businesses to potentially dozens. And you'll have several income streams and trickles, and that's going to completely turn e-commerce on its head. And then there's just going to be more and more continuous innovation going. And then, you'll have human to nuance interfaces, maybe even in your pocket by 2030. And then I think it's probably going to be till 2040 where we see digital life and human life living harmoniously side by side, and it's just like a very normal type of interaction. But I think it's going to take that kind of a long timeline for thought to become the dominant household name like Microsoft is. And that's the kind of thing we're really paying attention to here. It's not just some crypto company that's making the next step and then is going to disappear. It's not something that is going to, the team is going to dump all their tokens as soon as they get an exchange listing and then go off into the sunset. This is something that can fundamentally change the way humans live for centuries.